Hey there, fellow citizens. Welcome to another deep dive into the fascinating world of democracy. Tonight, we're diving into the wild world of elections, the energy, the excitement, the sheer unpredictability of it all. Not just any elections, mind you, but the idea of having all our elections on a single glorious day. Imagine the convenience and the chaos all rolled into one. It's like Black Friday, but instead of cheap TVs, we're deciding the fate of the country. Picture the lines, the anticipation, the sense of civic duty. Now I know what you're thinking, John, elections are already a circus. The rallies, the debates, the endless ads, why combine them into one giant, confusing spectacle? Wouldn't that just make things worse? Well, my friends, there are actually some folks out there who believe that holding simultaneous elections for everything from the local dog catcher to the president might not be such a bad idea. They argue it could streamline the process and save resources. They call it one nation, one election. Catchy, right? It has a certain ring to it, like a call to unity and efficiency. It's like a slogan you'd see on a bumper sticker right next to "I break for democracy" and "honk if you love term limits." It's designed to stick in your mind. But before we slap that bumper sticker on the back of our metaphorical democracy mobile, let's pop the hood and see what this whole one nation, one election thing is really all about. What are the mechanics behind it? Because as with most things in life, it's not as simple as it sounds. There are layers of complexity and a myriad of factors to consider. There are pros and cons, arguments for and against, and enough political jargon to make your head spin faster than a politician trying to avoid a direct question. Experts have weighed in, and the debate is far from settled, so buckle up, buttercups, because we're about to embark on a whirlwind tour of one nation, one election. We'll explore the potential benefits like increased voter turnout and reduced election fatigue, and by the end of it, you'll be either cheering for this electoral revolution or running for the hills, screaming, "Keep our elections separate!" Whether you see it as a brilliant innovation or a logistical nightmare, it's a topic worth understanding. All right, let's break this down like a bad campaign promise. You know, the kind that sounds great on paper, but gets a bit murky when you dig deeper. One nation, one election is basically the idea of holding simultaneous elections for all levels of government, local, state, and federal, on a single predetermined date. Imagine the convenience of it all. Think of it like this. Instead of having separate elections for your mayor, your governor, and the leader of the free world, you'd cast all those votes on the same day. It's like a one-stop shop for democracy. One ballot, one trip to the voting booth or mailbox if you fancy. One giant headache, maybe. But hey, at least you won't have to remember multiple election dates. The proponents of this idea argue that it would save money, reduce voter fatigue, because let's face it, voting can be exhausting, and maybe even increase voter turnout. They believe that a single election day could energize the electorate. Plus, they say it would force politicians to focus on actual issues instead of constantly campaigning. Imagine a world where politicians spend more time governing and less time on the campaign trail. Now, this might sound like a radical idea, but it's actually not that unusual. In fact, it's a practice that's been adopted by several countries with varying degrees of success. Many countries around the world already hold their elections this way. They have streamlined their electoral processes to make it more efficient and less cumbersome for their citizens. But, as with most things in politics, the devil is in the details. Implementing such a system requires meticulous planning and coordination across multiple levels of government. And those details? Well, let's just say they're about as clear as a politician's tax returns. The logistics can be mind-boggling, and the potential for confusion is high. So before we crown one nation, one election as the solution to all our electoral woes, let's take a step back in time and see how we got to this point in the first place. Understanding the history of our electoral system can provide valuable insights because, as they say, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And in the realm of elections, repeating past mistakes can have serious consequences. And when it comes to elections, that's a scary thought indeed. The stakes are high, and the outcomes can shape the future of our nation. So let's tread carefully and consider all aspects before making any sweeping changes.
Many countries around the world already hold their elections this way. But as with most things in politics, the devil is in the details.
Because, as they say, there are two sides to every story. And in the case of one nation, one election, that story is about as complicated as a politician's explanation of a campaign finance scandal.
But, as with most things in politics, the devil is in the details. And those details?
First and foremost, it could save a boatload of money. Think about it. Fewer elections mean fewer polling places, fewer poll workers, and fewer campaign ads clogging up our TV screens.
When you're constantly campaigning, it's easy to get caught up in the horse race aspect of politics. But if you only have one shot to win over voters every few years, you might be more inclined to actually talk about your plans for the country.
It could save money, reduce voter fatigue, and maybe even lead to a more substantive political discourse. Imagine fewer elections, less campaign spending, and more time for politicians to focus on governance rather than constant campaigning. But before you rush out to buy that one nation, one election bumper sticker, let's hear what the other side has to say. Critics argue that it could undermine regional issues and local representation because, as they say, there are two sides to every story. And in politics, those sides can be vastly different, each with its own set of compelling arguments. And in the case of one nation, one election, that story is about as complicated as a politician's explanation of a campaign finance scandal. The logistics, the legal hurdles, and the potential impact on democracy make it a topic worth delving into deeply.